We are also using this now. So I'm just hoping that we will be able to start on time in 2 minutes. Okay, I've got a notification from YouTube that it's live, and I've sent a message to Francesco to join in as well. So we just wait for another 3-4 minutes before we start officially. Okay. And then please look out for anybody in the backstage. Yes, Francesco, sir. Good evening, Professor Francesco. We are not able to hear you. Are you able to hear us? Okay. We are still not able to hear you. Probably your microphone or something may be off, or everything is.
Yeah, I think I got thrown out for a while. And then every time I go on the backstage. So you guys hear me, right? Everything is fine.
Yes, we can hear you.
Is the mute?
I'm only concerned about hearing Professor Francesco because I'm still not able to hear him.
Francesco, there'll be a taskbar right at the bottom. Or press the 3 buttons on your right hand side at the corner. Maybe in the bottom left window you see 3 dots.
So for those who may be viewing this on our channels, we are waiting for probably another minute or so for our Honorable Vice Chancellor to join in the call, and we will be starting very soon, maybe in the next 2 to 3 minutes. So in the meanwhile, please be there, and we shall commence the session very soon.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
My voice is okay now?
Yes.
Perfect.
Good. So I was just saying, we'll wait for another 2 minutes or so. Uh, our Vice Chancellor should be joining in any moment so that we can then start the session. I would request Nan to just check that Sir is not waiting to be brought into the room. So just make sure that if he's there in the backstage, please, transfer onto the call.
How will be the structure? Because I don't know. Yesterday I didn't follow the the test. I also prepare a presentation, just a little. Professor Sassi Menon said to me, modern presentation is a kind of conversation. I prefer to put my word in a slide because it's easy for the student to visualize it. And I try a test, it's 10 minutes, not more than 10 minutes, probably less.
Okay, I think we shall start the session now. Maybe I think our Vice Chancellor is having some, is probably tied up with something else. He probably just may join in a little later. So, welcome everybody. I welcome all of you guests and panelists for this event on service design for emerging economies. And the purpose of this event, this little webinar, is to really look at what service design means in the international context, and thereafter look at how service design as an area, as a subject, as a specialization within design can lend itself to a complex economy, to a complex situation and context such as India. And today we have with us a panel of highly esteemed guests. We have Professor Jasjeet Singh from the School of Industrial Design at Lund University in Sweden. We have Professor Francesco Galli, who is from IULM University in Milan, Italy. And we have Heron. I hope I'm pronouncing the name correctly. Please apologies if I'm not. Heron is from originally from Turkey, but practicing in Sweden as a service designer and an industrial designer. We also have Aideen, who is a product designer who has been extensively working in the field of products and services. We also have Dr. Sachin Dutt, who is a professor at the School of Design at Sushant University. This panel essentially represents a very interesting mix of people. And that I think itself is the base for any kind of design, and in the sense that when we look at things in an international perspective, this panel really represents what design means in an international context. So while there's Professor Gali, who is from Italy, Vice Chancellor is here. Good evening, sir. Welcome to the event today. And we are already with the panel. I hope we are able to, you are able to hear us. And
Yeah.
yeah. So we've just sort of started the session. So I would welcome you again for the welcome you into the session. And I was just briefing the audience about the event and the fact that we have a and with their representation spanning in Asia and Europe. This becomes a very interesting panel, which will talk about this area, this emerging area in India called service design. So I would request you, sir, to give the welcome address for this session. We are already live on all our platforms. Welcome, sir, Professor DNS Kumar, our Vice Chancellor. Sir, please.
Well, good evening to everyone. So it's my pleasure to once again welcome you all to this international discussion on service design, wherein we have speakers from across the continents. There's different continents, and this is going to be one of the very significant discussion in terms of adding the new dimensions with the different modalities of service design. Service design in most of the emerging countries contributes significantly to the gross domestic product and facilitate in terms of adding newer values to the products and the services. That's a sector that the different sector offers to the economy at large. Over a period of time, service industry is contributing in a very unique manner in terms of facilitating and strengthening the activities in various sectors, may it be banking or IT or insurance or taxation, or maybe designing any hotel services, hospitality services, or whatever it is. If I take one or two examples, how service designing not only helps the different sectors, but also cautions the risk involved in the services. If I give an example, in India, Life Insurance Corporation in 2003 had designed a product, and name of the product is Jeevan Sri policy, and it wanted to extend a life coverage to the insured for the period for which the insured insures. Financially, if I have to add to it, if you take a policy of 5 lakhs of rupees, an insured has to pay rupees 2,300 per month over a period of 16 years for a policy of 21 years. And after 21 years, he or she will get around 18 to 19 lakhs of rupees. Some of the well-read people in the field of finance just made an analysis. Just by paying 2,300 rupees per month and with the insured value of 5 lakhs of rupees, and return which you get is around 18 to 19 lakhs of rupees, how the insurance company is going to get benefited out of it? What is the ROI of Life Insurance Corporation? When they made an analysis, the Life Insurance Corporation would have incurred the loss. And in a span of 1 year, in 2003, they had launched whatever the business they had estimated. For the next 5 years, they had got the business in 1 year itself. And when the people brought to the notice of the Life Insurance Corporation, they made an analysis. Yes, we would have incurred the huge loss. They discontinued the product in 18th month of its launching itself, and they redefined the product, rather redesigned the product as new Jeevan Sri policy. Instead of Jeevan Sri policy, new Jeevan Sri policy. All the features of the product will be the same, but the insurance premium which insured has to pay per month is not 2,300 but 2,800. As a result of which, whatever reasonable return they have to earn, and there will be an assurance to the people that corporation will pay back the money, was ensured. So this is where the service industry not only bringing out the new product, but also ensuring that whatever they assure, the people get it back. Like this, maybe in GST, maybe in taxation, maybe in accounting field, maybe in hospitality field, lots of changes have happened. And this is purely because a sector of specialists who are designing the product are coming with new values to the product. If I take another example, we used to get a package for various medical tests have to be done from the hospitals. If you look back 5 years back and today, maybe the same number of tests or maybe added tests at a lesser price are available today. And that is how the design specialists are contributing substantially to all the sectors and subsectors of service industry. I'm so glad to note that today we have distinguished speakers from different parts of the world, and we have the participants who will be coming with the inquisitive clarifications, queries, and questions. And I'm sure this deliberation is going to strengthen the service industry substantially. On my personal behalf, on behalf of the Sushant University, I profusely thank all the distinguished speakers today for having taken out your valuable time and made it convenient to contribute to the emerging sector of the economy, that is service industry. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for the wonderful welcome address. And you've touched upon very important part of the service industry, especially in a country like India, when you talk about life insurance, because that's a touch point for millions of Indians. And the processes, we have seen the improvement in the processes over the past many years, and how something which was very highly paper oriented and very highly I would say process oriented has now become easy to access by everyone in a very simple way. So thank you very much for that insightful conversation regarding the service industry and the service, the way design can influence that. So thank you again, sir. And now we'll get into the main session. So as I was mentioning earlier, we have a good representation of people. We have two people who are from Turkey, who have studied in Europe, who have worked in Europe and Turkey and taught also in both these places. We have Professor Francesco, who is an Italian, but having his wide experience in both South America as well as Europe and also in India. So he's been a regular visitor in India for a long time. We have Professor Jasjeet, who is from India, but having now settled in Sweden for the last 15 or 18 years now. So if we really look at the composition of this panel, it itself talks about how design as a subject and design as a method is something that stretches so beautifully across continents, across spaces, and yet maintains a thread that is that continues across everywhere, and we are all able to talk to each other in a language that we all understand. And that language is what then ultimately gets transferred into the services and the products that are designed by people like us. So it's very interesting because I want to start this conversation, this discussion with touching upon a point of service itself. In our deliberations earlier with the panel, we came upon this concept of the Indian concept of service, and that is the concept of seva. Seva means service in our language, but it's a service that is not necessarily quantifiable in terms of any tangible return. We do it because it's part of the way we understand, it's a part of the way we uh, live our lives in a way. So, with this kind of a macro sort of a picture on what service or service slash seva means in our context, I would like to open this discussion. And I, I mean, I think nobody better to start talking about that than I would like to ask Jasjeet about what he would say about this. Um, it's a beautiful concept. We have discussed this earlier. I'm sure Professor Francesco also agrees that in India, the idea of service is a very strong part of our inherent psyche. So I would open it up to discussion. Maybe we can ask Justin can start, and then we can get Francesco to tell us what his perspective on the same thing, having been in India or being in Italy or anywhere in the world. So over to you, Justin.
So thank you very much for, first of all, Sasi and the entire Sushant School of Design to invite all of us for this discussion. And I think we are at a very interesting phase where we are trying to redefine the role of products on their own. Like so much is changing. And we fall back upon a lot of things which have been happening in the society uh, for years or for centuries. And for that, I take you back to India. That's where we are at for this discussion. But the culture of selfless service is embedded in the Indian culture and society. Um, be it your own family, be it your neighbors, be it your communities, be it your religion, be it your political scene. Everything is like everything people take it uh, as a matter of personal pride and responsibility to help the others without thinking about the consequences. So seva has different meanings in different cultures and different parts within India, and it's a lot to do with the community because everything starts with the community and uh, comes into you as an individual, and then you give it back to the community. So it's like a ever evolving process. And when I moved from India to Sweden, I was very interested in seeing like where is this uh, concept of seva getting represented. And as Professor Kumar also mentioned about different professional services, whether it is insurance sectors or mobile phone industry, uh, and even for hospitality. So on one side, in India, we are used to living with the idea of social infrastructure in whether it's a household or whether it is uh, a team activity. We always think about, we rely upon a lot of different stakeholders in that. And when you just compare it to, let's say, I'll give you easy examples here, which are everyday examples. Everyone probably on the other side of the screen, since we can't see you, but I'm sure you guys know about iTunes. You know about Spotify. Living in India, you know about Vodafone and Airtel. Uh, this is all the modern world. But what has happened is that in the last 10, 12 years, or I'll say maybe 20 years, the idea of the product has completely changed. So in a way, your product has become uh, a sevadar, rather, I would say a facilitator. Your product has become like a carrier of many other service touch points it can provide. So the idea of product has actually given the way to the idea of experience uh, and the idea of services. So an Apple phone without an iOS um, cannot exist. They all coexist. And then how the apps would work on this iOS or on an Android platform, uh, it's again the next level. And then what you see in the app and what it offers, it goes to the next level. So we are looking at a product, then we are trying to identify that we are actually going outside the domain of the product and trying to see what are the other things which are happening in this world, around the world, around the product in the context. And then we start looking at more variables, more perspectives, more user bases. So the idea of mass produced product has turned into a mass visited product. It's almost like going to a museum and seeing the same thing again and again. So it's the same kind of a software, it's the same kind of a hardware. Everyone has a different perspective on it. And with that, I won't stretch it further. I would pass it on to anyone who wants to take it. Like, at what stage does the idea of product turn into the idea of an experience or a service?
There's that's interesting thing here because when we look at the way products get embedded into our lives, they in certain ways that embedding process becomes it makes a translation into a service, the product becomes a service in a way, because you're not really only looking at it in an external way, but also you're internalizing it in some ways in the way you use it and things like that. So, Professor Francesco, what's your take on the idea of humanity, human-centered design versus and along that, taking it further into the idea of services?
Thanks so much. First of all, thanks so much to you, Professor, and to your university to accept me. You know me that after 25 years of career, I'm now moving in something that is a bridge between design and philosophy. Let me say more philosophy than design. That's why probably for the student online, this should appear just a little boring. I know, because I was younger like you 25 years ago, but I hope that you can remember this conversation thanks to the university. When we talk about service, I'm not a service designer. I'm a professor in design, but I'm not a service designer. But if coming back from the Latin word of service, the Latin word of service means slave, no? Servitium, be slave. You are at the service. This means that you are slave to someone. Starting from this idea, we can also think that the concept of service design, that for sure today is absolutely a positive concept. No, you need to facilitate, you need to help, you need to open, you need to connect, you need to create something that is a bridge. No, using digital technology or something like experience. Before my colleague talked about experience, but for my personal point of view, we are only looking one direction, the positive side, because that's why it's also important to remember the concept of a slave. No? Be slave to someone. It's not only slave to another person, because today probably we are not slave to another person, but probably we are slave to technology. Probably we are slave compared to institution. Probably we are slave compared to fashion trends. That's why when we talk about service, from my personal point of view, and that's why I also prepare just a little conversation, probably with time later, to talk about this concept that for me is really important today, the transparent society. Transparent means clean. Transparent means something that you can see, something that is visible. We live today in this perfection society, no? That we know all, we can access to all, we can open Google Maps and we can know how to move. If we don't know something, we can Google it, we can open an application and we can discover without suffering, without losing time. For my personal point of view, fantastic, super good, super nice. I think that society needs this, but we need to keep in our mind the negative point of view. And when I say negative, I don't want to say bad. Pay attention for the student, because the people that thinks about negative thinks about something not good. Negative is something that gives you the possibility to look in a different perspective. That's why if all the people look one side, probably there is a problem. That's why, and that is also the scope of the education, give you the possibility for sure to create your future, to develop a career, to acquire knowledge for entering in the market, but at the same time, to give you also the negative approach to discover something that is invisible. Like, and I conclude, the concept of service for Latin means slave. That's why when you are slave, there is a negative side. Of course, positive, because if you help with an application, it's positive. If you find easier, something is absolutely positive. But pay attention, there is always a negative side. I don't know if I reply to your question, Professor. This is only the introduction, and I would like to also to give to my colleague the possibility to also criticize me. Thanks so much.
I think that's a very interesting viewpoint as well, because when we accept something, we also accept it unconditionally, and that unconditional acceptance of something is can lead to problems as well, and problems which we ideally should be aware of and we are able to overcome in some way or the other. And this, I think, has been happening with every technology, everything that came up over the period of time and from historically. So it's very interesting that you bring about this whole concept of, you can say, the positive and the negative aspects of the things. But again, when we look at services, when we look at services, essentially what they're basically meant to help you go around doing things that you would uh, have to function. I mean, things that are required for you to function. So when we sort of distill this whole idea of service, and we talked about the selfless service that, let's say, in the Indian context, whether it's in the Sikh tradition, whether it's in some other tradition, most faiths and traditions have an inbuilt element of service built into them, and it's a cultural thing. So that service is actually a cultural uh, aspect. And then you have the service as we talk today, which is delivered through products or systems or processes that help us, again, deliver that. Whether it is for commercial gain or not, that's a different question. So when we look at this whole picture, where do we think we are presently placed? Are we anywhere moving towards that larger philosophical goal, as what the philosophical goal that Professor Francesco was talking about? What do you think, Jesse?
Yeah, I think uh, your the philosophical role is very much emerging ever since the product went out to the masses, and there were different perception levels. Same product, like it started. I'm sure since Professor Francesco talked about 25 years. So when we were just graduating, mobile phones had they've just come out. So Nokia, everyone remembers here, at least our generation, Nokia or Ericsson or Siemens and all of them. But it was a Nokia designed in Scandinavia, but used in Taiwan, used in India, used in South Africa, and there was a certain comfort factor. And already back then, you could differentiate between what the product had to offer, and it turned into genres, different product genres. So they were they were like Nokia users who did not feel comfortable using a Motorola phone, and they were the BlackBerry users who could never live without the toggle button. So all these things, I would tell my students often that these are slow poisoning factors. The companies are doing this. Apple throughout, you buy one Apple product and then you buy the next and the next and the next. And to tell you a very my personal story, uh, in 2005, my first purchase of an Apple product was this small iPod Shuffle, which you could put on your collar, with a clip. But it was such a inviting product. It had the features, it had the design elements, it had the form factor, which made you think about, can I grow from here? Can I go to the next level? Because it's connecting to a software. I had probably a Microsoft Windows back then, but iTunes was really a very convenient uh, service provider. Or as Dr. Francesco also said, it was like uh, I was becoming the slave of the iTunes. I was getting in the ring, and the next thing I want to do is, oh, this is good, but now probably I need an iPhone. Then I go to the next level. Oh, okay, I know that I can only use some limited software in the MacBook, but I still want the MacBook. And then the iPad, then iPhone 3 comes, then iPhone 4 comes, or 5 comes, and like that. So what is happening here? You are in a kind of a vicious circle, service circle, or whatever Professor Francesco would like to say it. In a way, it is a counter philosophy going on here, that you are forced to fall into the desirability circle, that I want more and more. And all that the user is doing is just changing a little chamfer, a little edge, a little corner, and you want it. You want it all the time. And there are many people like us over here who would agree that once you start using a certain kind of operating system, you don't want to move to the next. You don't want to move from a Samsung to an iPhone and vice versa. And there are so many things. It's happening in the car industry. You start driving a BMW, you don't like the Mercedes, you go into a Volvo. Not only that, you fly Lufthansa, you don't want to fly KLM. So it's happening. It's everywhere. The service concept is coming. They are making those slaves, but the slaves are basically what the slaves are doing is they are picking the goodies. They are collecting those goodies. And what are those goodies is something which we would definitely discuss later. But these goodies are those service touch points. Every company, every branding firm is making sure that this concept of slow poisoning, that reminder that this is Apple, this is Lufthansa, this is Airtel, this is Seva of Sikhism. Like as you said, you always say you take the name of God because it is in the name of God. You keep doing that. So this is the philosophy that you have to do reminders. You have to always tell them it is happening because I did the product. The system is working because my product is working. And the system is working efficiently because you are using my product properly. And then you are using the product properly because you can afford to pay for it. And then we will provide you with a network. We will provide you with after sales. So this philosophy, this counter philosophy actually it actually sways the user for many years to come. That I'm now kind of completely uh, I've given in, I've become loyal to this product. So loyalty is also a part of it. That what do you do as a designer to establish uh, the loyalty index amongst the users? So
So I have a point here to make that now this is what you're saying. This is how the world has evolved or taken this whole idea of product or a service into the lives of people. Now, what does it mean for countries like India? Because that's one of the questions we are trying to address here in this session. Because for us sitting here in India, we see that there is a huge potential for delivering services of a very high quality because we have a huge population with a very diverse needs. In the Indian socio-cultural economic context is very complex. It has so many, there's language. If you just take language as a example, already we have so many different languages, and being able to address concerns, for example, in the area of healthcare, in the area of, as the Vice Chancellor was talking about, in banking services, in areas where uh, uh, there's a population which needs to be addressed, which they don't read and write. You see, they're illiterate or they're not literate enough to actually understand these things. So the Indian context is actually a very complex context when it comes to services. But since our population is so high, our requirements are so diverse, the area is also very you can say very rich for a service designer to come in and to actually come up with those solutions, come up with those ideas. So, from a macro context, how do we see it? So, maybe I don't know. I just want to probably ask Professor Francesco for a few words on this, and then we want to look at the two designers who actively been involved in the field take their view as well. So, Professor Francis, what is your experience of having experienced India uh, as a place, and where do you think this whole thing for India makes sense?
Absolutely. before talking to India, because here in Milano yesterday we concluded Design Week. No, we have this kind of spatial design week that is concluding yesterday. And this morning I was reading a magazine that talked about some critical point of view about the idea of create a platform like Design Week in Milan that will this year is in September. The 90% of the events, the 90% of the company, they present service project. No? The idea of service, experience, interactive, these keywords are more or less the 90% of all the company, Italian company and international company. Coming back to India, yeah, for sure. I'm not a great expert of India. I'm only traveling to India like 10, 15 times. But I love this beautiful culture and country. But it's impossible for me to understand because from the north to the south, from the east to the west, you have a complexity. That's why if, and I'm trying to reply to your question, if service design discipline in India can be a tool or a knowledge, let me say a knowledge, to preserve, discover, and of course promote diversity, I think that will be fantastic. If service design discipline in India will be a tools, an Anglo-Saxon tools, because let me say, without any problem, that the idea, the concept of service design is from the north of Europe, from Scandinavian country, from Anglo-Saxon country. If this knowledge will be applied in India only because it's cool, only because you can sell, only because it is something that the people want to copy and paste, for my personal point of view, this will be a great mistake because your complexity should be implemented, not reduced. I don't know if I reply to your question. If service design in India, and I'm really happy that you and your university, you are trying to establish a new course, a new approach, a new research center in service design, but with the idea to implement complexity, not reduce complexity. Because if you try to reduce the complexity, compare India to Finland, compare India to Norway, it's impossible. That's why my suggestion with my beautiful knowledge of Indian culture is please use service design to increase complexity and then give the people option. That is also a beautiful piece, not solution, option. Because one of the main problems of service design is I'm using a service because I want to resolve the problem. I want to go faster to the solution. That is the mistake. Give me option. Give me option and teach me how to select. Then I select. I don't know if I reply to your question, and thanks so much.
I fully agree with you, Professor Francesco. This is the biggest challenge, not only in service design to work as a profession, but every design field, is that, we say design is a problem-solving activity, but it is super important to first identify the problems, and also look at what are the questions. What are the questions the students are asking? And it is super important. There, the philosophies also tie up. Like, what are the schools doing? What are the schools focusing at? So a lot of schools the world over and the graduates want to create a product which should immediately enter into Instagram. That's a solution. And a solution which would last 5 days with 100 likes or 1,500 likes, or sometimes you're lucky even 1,000,000 likes. But then it goes like quicksand, it disappears. The issue in education is, what are the problems which we want to address, both as an education and as a society? How do you empower? So it is give the students the ability to question the relevance, to identify the relevant questions, and the students should be given, and they can make choices that this is how we go for it. So I'm just cohering and saying exactly what Professor Francesco is saying. What is the question? And I think every school, if you look at it, the world over and within India, you can even differentiate between various schools. What does a school have to offer as an educational model? They do this. They create students who are very good skill and technique oriented graduates. There are schools where the students are, in spite of their abilities, they are very good uh, foresighters because they can evaluate different processes and experiences. Yeah, I see that there are many people who are not in the window here yet.
I think there's some issue today because of network here. I think there's excessive rain happened in the last 24 hours, and that's kind of disrupted quite a few things here. So I'm just hoping that our host is there in the backstage to actually get people back onto the thing. Anyway, this is very interesting because um, the fact that even educational institutions are service organizations, and what they give as a service is what will create those people who actually catalyze action in society, right? So that's really that's a very interesting aspect. Now I want to come to maybe Heron or Irene, whichever whoever would like to. What's your now? See, you are people who have been in the field. You've worked in different organizations like Philips Healthcare and many other companies, Atlas Copco and others, and where you have probably explored that bridge. When I say bridge and when I connect Turkey to the bridge, I always remember Fatih Akin's film on the music of Turkey, right? So and
Yeah.
it's about crossing that bridge, right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
from the Asia to the Europe, and what you see there and what you hear, it's a very fascinating movie for me every day, even today. So
Yeah.
you have people who have sort of crossed that bridge in a way. So I want to hear from you. What is that? What is it really? What has it meant for you? Yeah, as
Yeah.
designers in this area of service design.
Yeah. I can start. Actually, me and Jeremy, we prepared a few slides. We can start from there. Actually, trying to explain how I personally bridged from being an industrial designer to a I wouldn't like to say service designer, but more like a multidisciplinary designer, throughout the years. And we have a few examples I could start sharing.
There's a share button at the bottom
Yeah.
on your. I think you'll be able to use that.
Yes. I don't know if it's working right now.
Uh, is it? We are just able to see you right now. We are not able to.
Okay, I'll try again.
Nan, if you're there, if you could help.
Okay. It says browser doesn't allow me to.
There is no the screen sharing is actually through the when you click the share, it says share screen.
Yeah, I do that, but somehow okay. Give me a second. I hopefully.
In the meantime, I'm trying to help you to keep your time and to share when you will share your screen and we stop talking. I would like to use this moment to say something more also that especially for the student, or for what I don't like to call them student. I prefer to call them creative leader. No, young creative leader. That is what I prefer, because student means like to be at the service. No, like with this here to be a slave to the professor. No, you are young creative leader. Yeah, for sure. When we talk about philosophy, when we talk about the meaning, the humanistic approach, probably at 20 years old, 18 years old, this is something just a little far from you. And I understand you, because like I mentioned to you, when I studied design, I still remember now my philosophy professor, and then I rediscovered. For sure, now it's important to follow university that give to you tools, knowledge, technical knowledge, how to use software, how to understand, how to solve the problem. But try to keep in your mind that technology is faster than you. In next 5-10 years will be on the market other service design better than you. That's why you need to adapt yourself, you need to implement yourself. Is a kind of ongoing learning process. You can start from technology, no problem to start from technology, no problem to start from interaction design if you love something like this, but continue, open your mind to learn from humanistic approach, because otherwise you are only a technician. And service design, like technician, maybe can give you the possibility to find a job next year, but for sure you will lose this job next 5 years. Why? Because technology, process, we don't know nothing. Never believe to the people that say, don't worry, I know how will be the future. This pandemic give us the possibility that we don't know nothing. Even if we have the best technology, best service, we don't know. That's why, and then I conclude, and I hope that my colleague and my friends can resolve the problem to share the screen. Otherwise, my suggestion is to continue talking. For sure, it's important. That's why I really appreciate this idea of Professor Sassi Menon and the Sushant University to create and establish this new program that will be technology-oriented, but at the same time, humanistic-oriented. This is kind of balancing between the two perspectives.
I also want to add some personal notes, because I was very intrigued by your talk about our devotions to products and service touchpoints. First of all, thank you very much for also inviting me, Sassi, and also to Sushant University. Thanks a lot. Well, we will have a lot of time also talking from designers' point of view, but I would like to read some notes from anthropologic point of view when now that we are talking about philosophy of things as well. Our interaction with products and tools is actually very historic. Like, it has a very long-term history. First, we were hunter-gatherers, and then later, when we were back then, when we were hunter-gatherers, before even being able to use tools, we were identifying ourselves within they, though. Everything else was though. There was no you, there was no he, she, or it. The moment humans started making tools, carving tools from stones, that's when the materialistic culture started. And then the material became our tool, and that created a new era in human history. And that's when actually the it started to come out. And that's when the brain started to completely separate from our body. So then our body became the slave, being in service, at service to our brain. So, and that's exactly and also this is the tradition that is continuously happening right now. We are looking at our bodies as the slave of our brain. We think with the brain, and then we just dictate what to do to our brains. Before, it was a whole. Humans were a whole with the nature around them. And looking at that, I also want to remind, there is no such an experience as eating by hands. Everybody knows when you eat Ethiopian food or other foods, types of foods, eating by hand is the most delicious experience. And that is because there is a direct connection with the food and ourselves. Then the fork came into place. And that's when the tips of the fork became the extension of our neurons. And in the neurology, brain literally realizes fork, the tip of the fork, as the extension of our neurons. And there came later the mouse and the screen. And all these devices came in between ourselves and our creations. And the idea or the thing, my advice to students, the new creative leaders, as Francesco's words, would be, how do we make sure that we create direct connections with the whole, between the whole and the humans? How do we create, if it's a food service, for example, how do we create a seamless connection between the food and the eater? Be it the delivery service, be it the food preparation service, be it the table. But how do we create that seamless experience, the seamless connection with it? How do we create a seamless connection with the rest of the world? And that's how the whole entire internet of things all came out. The whole entire internet, the World Wide Web came out, because it's, again, our tool to feel connected to the rest of the world. So, and then that's exactly coming back to your bridge. How do we make sure that we are bridging humans with the rest, with the whole, so that with the Seva tradition, all these religious traditions, the religions, they all came out in anthropological point of view when humans started materializing their environment, when humans started separating their brain from their body, when humans started thinking in materialistic world. And then the religions came out to remind human, you are a whole. And how do we bring it back? How do we bridge it back again to give that holistic experience? So that's maybe my advice to the new creative leaders.
Very nice. Very well put. The canvas is very well put, I must say. You know, the whole the trajectory. So I don't know whether you are able to now
Yes.
connect screen.
Sorry, I somehow it crashed, and I think I should be able to share now, or
Let's try it once more. In the meanwhile, while you try, I must say that this was a very interesting, very interesting way to look at the whole thing. I think the screen has come up. Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
So after, sorry about that technical problem. So my name is Edin. I am originally from Turkey. By education, I'm an industrial designer. I started my career working in mostly consumer products, doing consumer electronics, household appliances and such. And in the last 10 years, I've been mostly focusing on in the healthcare domain. I think it was a beautiful introduction, and thanks for having me here, Sasi, and all the others who organized this. So
Yeah, thank you. Can you do full screen? Can you just try and do full screen?
yeah, better.
I think you have to. Yeah.
Works. Yeah. I think you guys were filling up for me. Jaren has already started a bit, but me and Jaren, we wanted to show a simple example, and we talked about this complexity, how we can approach a complex, let's say, design challenge to tackle. And I think coming from a healthcare perspective, there's no other, I guess, system that is as complex as healthcare. So we thought we would start with a simple example and take you guys through a few slides to show actually why it matters to zoom out and think from a system perspective rather than really just getting stuck in maybe not, I mean, only stuck in let's say hardware or software perspective. I'm going to use this example. We don't have to talk about the product itself, but it's an X-ray system designed by one of our old colleagues, Derek Wananderio. It's an X-ray system that is used in minimally invasive procedures. So it's like a robotic arm actually that moves around the table and takes pictures of the patient, so the physician can see what's happening inside the body while he or she is working on the patient. So very boringly, a linear design process looks like this. You try to learn about this product itself. You try to frame a problem within this product. And this can be applied also to software, not only hardware, but I'm using a hardware example. And then you start developing a solution for that problem, and then you refine it and you deliver it to the user. So traditionally, again, you design an interaction between a user and this, you design an interaction between a user and the solution. So, and the problem, sorry, the wording is wrong there. So it's very one-dimensional. You take a very specific problem and you solve that and you deliver it to the user. But let's go back to this picture, this example of X-ray system. And if you put this example into a context, this is a picture I took a few years ago back in Belgium, actually, while visiting a hospital. And obviously, things start looking a bit different. Things are a bit more complicated easily, you can see. I mean, starting from the users, obviously there's patient on the table, but there's a physician and there's a nurse in the room. And then obviously there are other things, other equipments, not only the X-ray itself, but there's a table, there are screens. And there are instruments that the physician is using to operate this patient. So if you go back to this picture, it already became a bit more complicated, not in a bad sense, of course, but talking about that complexity, because delivering, it became not only finding a solution for a specific problem, but it became more delivering a care. So you're, as a designer, actually you are delivering, you are finding a solution for the user. In this case, it's maybe physician and the nurse, to deliver a care. So it became from a one single dimension, one single user, it became multi-user, actually, design challenge. And then if you zoom out a bit more in this room layout that I'm using as a very simple illustration here, it's not only the physician and his or her assistant next to them, but also there are other people in the room. There's a circulating nurse. There's an operator for the ultrasound system. There's an operator for maybe for the C-arm. And it's not only more users, but it's also more equipment all of a sudden. There are sterile tables, there are again controls for other things, there are more screens. So the reality, actually, it's the same room, actually, this one. The reality looks much more complicated than that. So again, there's an anesthesia machine. There are disposables stored back in those those cabinets. There are more screens. There's again circulating nurses. There are lights. There is a nurse anesthetics now who's taking care of the anesthesia machine, and the list goes on and on. So it's not only a one single hardware anymore. So coming back to this picture, just to simplify things. We are delivering a care for the patient who is lying on the table. But again, zooming out even further, this is not only the patient. Obviously, patient is the center, but the whole realm of healthcare system is more complicated than just providing a small hardware solution to take care of that patient. So there is families involved now there, and we talked about healthcare professionals, clinicians, nurses, operators. There are different departments. For example, the patient might be coming from emergency to operation room to general ward. So how do you solve challenges for those transitions, for that journey? There is hospital C-suite, which is basically managing the hospital, taking maybe purchasing decisions, taking strategic decisions. And then who are actually getting different opinions from different key opinion leaders in the industry, whether they could be key opinion leaders, physicians or scientists, and you can expand this list to maybe even competitors. Who are they? What are they doing within this field? And also care reimbursers, payers, insurance companies, and above all, there are regulators who are regulating the whole healthcare domain. So this complex, I think, system of healthcare is something that we need to take into account rather than just designing a hardware or software solution for a specific problem. So in order to really create a more seamless service, let's say, we need to think and zoom out to look at the whole picture of the reality. And I think from here, Ceren can continue a bit to elaborate on this one, and I'll try to chip in as much as possible.
Okay, thank you. I will also share my screen. Yes, so similar to, can you see my screen? Not yet.
Is it the same issue as I do?
It could be.
Browser?
Oh, okay,
Could
I
be
see.
The browser. Oh, no, it's not. I think it's coming.
It's
It is coming? Okay.
Yeah,
Let me know if you can see it now.
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. So yeah, similar to Aidan's background, I am also coming from my majority of my background is coming from healthcare, designing for healthcare, and designing for a complex system like that. From a human-centric design perspective, we would usually look at the whole entire journey, understand the journey. So, and that journey would start from the deterioration of the patient, then the hospital admission, the treatment, and discharge. In that journey, we would understand later, one step lower, the actors playing in these, if each different segments of this journey, like who are the actors, then what are their needs and what are their jobs that they want to do, and then what are the issues, what are the bottlenecks that they face during their journey. And from that, we try to understand the entire issues and bottlenecks to reach out, to bring out the opportunities in a very typical human-centric design approach. So this is, I think, the best design approach I have seen so far. But then there is also, to be honest, there is also a threat within this. And the threat is the linear analysis of users and their needs. Sometimes the analysis become in silos. So sometimes the threat is we are prone to identify each specific department or each specific user in their own silos, with their own issues in silos, without understanding, again, the whole picture, or losing our connection with the whole picture. So what is better to do would be looking at a whole, again, as a complex system, because complex system, like especially like healthcare, is not a linear system, or it doesn't have a linear journey, linear flow of things or happenings. It's not a cause and effect relationship. It's more of a different elements of the complex system that interact with each other. They have interdependencies with each other, and then they have connections, interconnections with each other, and they affect each other. And there it requires, again, a holistic synthesis instead of an analysis in silos when we do design for complex systems like healthcare. So from there, I would say, again, like similar to the other points, it's not about, or it's not only about human-device interaction. It's not only about designing solutions. It's not only about designing services for humans, but it's more about seamless, holistic experiences, creating that connection with the whole, with the entire complex system for the users, so that they can do what is the most important for them and what's their main job that they need to do. In healthcare, it would be the caregiving. Providing the care is the main task that they want to do. It's not about turning the switches or turning the knob of a ventilator or going and grabbing the tools that they would need in the operation room. It's not that they need. Those are the artifacts of the journey. We need to see, when we look at those systems, there we create, with the solutions that we design, we also create some artifacts and some bottlenecks. We need to again step back and understand what is the main need. The main need could be the caregiving, or if it's an education system, nurturing the new generations. It's not about again the books or the tools of education, but it's more about the main need is nurturing. The main need is the transportation. The main need is the food system or the energy system. So you can carry it over to other systems as well, similar to health system. So when I go to the hospitals to talk with the healthcare professionals, I usually try to understand, again, to understand their needs, you need to also understand their motivations, what motivates them and what are their needs. Is that their motivations, to be honest, are usually the highest one. 100% of them always answer their main motivation is caring for people. Then the 90% of them say their main motivation to come to work every day is the team. They come there and show up in the hospital for being with the team, within the team, because they always they like interacting with each other, human to human interactions, human connections, talking with the patients, talking with the patient family, talking with each other, talking with the other professionals is the main motivation and is the main pleasure that they get from their work and from their own journey. So that's something that we also need to always remember, again, that the solutions and the touch points are actually the enablers for them to do the real thing, that is the connectivity with the whole. So again, coming back.
Can I interrupt and chip in? So I guess we need to also ask the question why that patient ended up in that hospital in the first place, right? Because I remember visiting a hospital, talking to a physician who is treating patients. He was telling me that he made the patients promise quit smoking, otherwise he wouldn't treat them, because he knew that that same patient would come back in 3 months and the whole care concept would become a maintenance concept rather than a well-being. So that's why he would always question, okay, if you don't stop quitting, I'm not going to treat you, because this is going to be just a plumbing work and nothing else. So I guess that's why we need to maybe question that first to deliver that care and well-being.
Yeah, exactly. So going or understanding the health systems not within the hospital walls, but also beyond the hospital walls is, I think, the key point here. Like you're saying, it's the prevention care. Like, how do we make sure that we're not doing a band-aid approach by delivering the treatment after the damage is done? How do we make sure that the damage is not done? So that's actually the main healthcare, and maybe the healthcare transformations will come into that slowly. We're talking about transformations in the very beginning of this talk. So one of the transformations we would see probably in the healthcare is the prevention care, preventive care, that is not allowing the patients to get damage, let's say. So that is one of the good points. And also coming back to, again, the prevention care and coming back to the health systems itself. So I also want to introduce myself too. So I'm a multidisciplinary designer. I don't, again, identify myself as a product designer anymore or a service designer, but it's more of a multidisciplinary designer. But also I am a strategist for green transitions. And this is something that prevention care also touches upon a little bit the green transitions itself, because now we know with the COVID, we are much more familiar with also the greenhouse gas emissions, the crisis moments with the COVID crisis, pandemic crisis, and the climate crisis. They all come together and multiply the importance of the green transitions, the need for the green transitions. And the main thing that we need to remember is that, again, not about reducing the emissions when the treatment is done, but reducing the emissions with preventive care, with the life well-being. So starting from the focal point, that is the circle of treatment care, how do we understand, again, step a little bit backwards, step a little bit up, back and see the whole entire healthcare system. And then from there, we identify what is the health systems is made out of: the medical suppliers, the pharma, the research, the hospital itself, the regulators, the society. And then all together, actually, we also, again, when we design for these complex systems, we also, again, need to understand that it is a social ecological system that we are designing for. So it always has also other interactions with other systems too. So it will impact the whole as we see right now. And I think that also wraps up with the very start of the talk, how the SEWA tradition itself also comes. So here we see a complex system, be it the SEWA tradition, for example. It's just it is, first of all, it is creating networks of connections, and then it organizes itself. It has many parts, and then it gives emergence to new things to rise. And that's the importance that we need to do. We need to let new things to emerge in these systems. Yeah. So
yeah, that's really wonderful, because that's really amazing, because I think really what we are doing justice to what we used to talk about many years ago about holistic design being a holistic subject. I think the philosophy, coming back to the philosophy of design, the philosophy of doing things in the right manner, that philosophy is at the stage where now everybody is beginning to implement that, whether it is the larger ecological concerns and the design processes that surround that concern, or whether it's healthcare, or whether it's hospitality, whatever it may be. I think we are reaching a point where the conception of holistic thinking is filtering down into the processes, systems, products, and life that we are seeing today. And in a way, I mean, I get this feeling that we are sort of graduating to a higher intelligence at some level. You know, whether it is being enabled through technology, whether it is being enabled through information, the ability to process information, we probably are evolving to a higher level of intelligence. Hopefully, we are. I don't think we should think negatively there, but we don't know. But so it's really amazing. So I would like to ask, the panelists we're kind of running out of time now. So I want to ask maybe a general conclusion question to where are we really headed when we talk of bringing the process of design into filtering it down into this larger context of how we are all working together, how we are all doing things together, how are we evolving that philosophy behind uh, bringing out the effective solutions that we are seeing today. How what is the way ahead? So I don't know who wants to go first. Anybody? Jesse, you want to do,
I
or
think, okay. So one of the things we need to understand, so it's not an answer, I will put another question for you. So what we need to understand is, so we all talked about holistic complex transitions, or rather, what do you say, seamless holistic transitions, if I'm correct, right? So when you look at a very large activity center, what we talk about in service design, the product is just a mere intermediary. There are things before, there are going to be things during, and there are going to be things after. So what we need to understand here is who is running the show. So quite often it has happened to me also, the transition from being an industrial designer and turning into a multidisciplinary designer over the years. Many times while working on projects, I have gone back to the clients telling them, look, now we've done this product, but we also need to think how we launch this product. And we also need to tell the marketing team that this is the way to launch the product. So the effectivity of the whole product implementation would be more effective, I'm using the same word, it will be very seamless. And because the user today is very aware, we have to see that, in the last few decades, compared to where we were in the Nokia Motorola generation to now in the Apple Alexa Siri generation and beyond, the user is actually much more aware. The user is much more is expecting much more. And as Professor Francesco said in the very beginning, that there are always things about positives, but there are also things about negatives. Every time you think about negatives, the user runs out. The user says, I don't want this product because now I'm seeing a flaw here. So whether it is, since we are going out of the perspective of product, we are going into the perspective of a larger problem. First thing to understand from Aydin or Jaran, since you worked on these projects, whether it was Philips or whether it was the healthcare policies, who was taking the decisions? Were we trying to solve only an endoscopic surgery, for example, or were we trying to solve the problem why people were getting the problem of some stones in the first place? So what is your take on that? Any one of you?
Would you like to go first?
Yeah. So, well, who is making the decisions would be again. I would say similar to again the whole entire systemic approach. Hospitals are not like a one person, or healthcare systems are not one person again driven. This hospital decisions or healthcare decisions are not like that. But also we see that there are, again, similar to what you're saying, the regulatory approaches. They already dictate some terms of changes and transformations or some regulations to be taken into account in healthcare services and in healthcare solutions. Then the healthcare services, the providers themselves also do take into account both their users and the patient outcomes, and also the well-being of their own practitioners, their own professionals, so that the entire sustainability, not in terms of environmental sustainability, but sustainability of the well-being of the people, including their own care providers, are maintained. So then the decision-making, I would say, is again a holistic approach. The decisions are dictated by some regulators, which are again responding to, when you look at it from a systems approach, there are actually, again, coming from lobbies. And sometimes the lobbies could be the citizens themselves, sometimes the companies themselves. It's a very complex, or the pharma itself. So it's, again, very multiple stakeholders who are coming up with their own needs and demands, and then the decisions are usually taken into account this whole entire complex soup of demands and requirements. So.
Yeah, I mean, briefly, I can also echo the same things as Jaran was saying, and also as Professor Francesco put it nicely, healthcare system or healthcare, so let's say, yeah, systems in different countries are a good example of that actually complexity that you need to celebrate. Otherwise, you cannot just go and design something that is based on one stakeholder. So you have to take everyone's basically opinion into consideration, and from there I see it as a more like a society, almost. How do you design for a society? Especially, I'm not a Indian culture or Indian country expert neither, but I can imagine, I can feel some similarities where I come from, and I guess it's even a lot more complicated than Turkey. So you need to celebrate and embrace that complexity. Otherwise, there's no other way to design a solution. It can be healthcare, it can be anything basically to serve for society. So in that case, it's very hard to say. I don't think there's one decision maker in these kind of complex systems. So it is basically a system that serves to the society, and that's how you should treat it. And society is complex, of course. It's you cannot just make one solution that fits all. So yeah.
Yeah, and maybe there the designer's role comes again as a bridging point. Like coming back to the bridge example, designers are the bridge between all these different members, different actors, and also they need to make sure maybe they do have an inclusive process when they are designing. They need to include all these point of views, and maybe as much participatory approach as possible. So that's one thing that designers can also identify their new role here. Yeah.
Professor Francesco?
I have nothing to say because the conversation absolutely is interesting for me, but the second part of the conversation moved to something that I call something like close to the market, no? And absolutely my compliments, because the project you develop is absolutely fantastic. But I don't know, probably it's my problem, or probably because I can do it, but close to the market means for me losing research. That's why, anyway, it's super good. I think that, like we mentioned before, for young creative leader, we need to balance solution and also critical thinking. In this moment of my life, I'm 45 years old. When I look solution, I look product that resolve the problem. My first question is not what they can do, but who gain. That's why probably is my problem, because I never now pay attention to the solution, because there is always something that gains. It is not the designer. That's why congratulations to Aydin and Seren, because but I have nothing to say. I prepared something, but probably this is not the best moment to share it, because it's absolutely far from the conversation that we are now touching. And I think for me it's a great honor to spend 1 hour and a half. I don't know how I think so, yeah, 1 hour and a half with you, and I hope that the conversation, the possibility, the network that also this Sushant University, thanks to Professor Sasmeon, can give to the Indian market, because this, from my personal point of view, is only the starting point of a new conversation. But I would like to conclude, probably because I just reading a new book from a Korean philosopher, Byung-Chul Han, that the transparent that is positive, also your solution, your design is something to resolve. No, you build something that can scan the body, that can visualize something that is not visible, and this for sure is something like transparent. But behind the transparent society, there is something that is absolutely controversial. We are not immortal. We cannot live for 200 years. You understand me? That's why for all the technology that we can develop to establish a long career, a long profession, a long life, we are not immortal. That's why it's also depend what are you looking for. Probably better spending the rest of the time to doing a trip rather than solving the problem. I know that when something is touching you, your family, it's not easy, especially this pandemic, this virus give us also to challenge with something that is close, proximity. That is also another keyword that I would like to give to the student, the proximity. It's close to me, that's why I put I like it. It's touching to me, that's why I put I like it. This is the like society, no? That's why, for example, the great social media platform, they didn't put I don't like it. Because if you put the button I don't like it, the people say, but you are not polite. But you are not good. But you are not cool. Now you understand me? I don't like it. That is the message, That's why service design is in this moment I like it and I'm doing. But probably we need to discover I don't like it. I don't know. Thanks so much to everybody. That is also my final reflection to this beautiful conversation with all of you.
Seriously, it was a very, very amazing session. Yeah, like you said, 1.5 hours. We actually had planned for, I think, something like 1 hour, probably 5 or maximum 1 hour 10 minutes. But I think it's really kind of taken its own life, and we know we are all teachers and professors. We can keep talking for a long time, and we have lots to discuss. I think we need to obviously wind this up, and just for everybody's benefit, these are recording. This recording will be available, though it is live broadcast on all our 3 channels: Facebook, Facebook, YouTube, as well as LinkedIn. They will be available as recordings on our YouTube channel for anybody who is wanting to see it later. And I would like to call on Dr. Sachin Dutt, who's been very patiently and quietly observing the whole discussion, sitting on the side, to say a few words for conclusion for this session. And we are also looking at now doing another event at the end of November, the 27th of November, where we want to now bring in the whole idea of service design or this system design thinking, and link it up with what we are also working on, which is social design, which is looking into the real problems that are being faced in India, specifically in various areas, whether it's healthcare, livelihoods, and things like that. So we at Sushant, we want to create a paradigm for design education which goes beyond the standard understanding of what a design student should be learning, and the complexities that in the future world that we are facing. How are we going to get ready for that? How are we going to look at doing things differently, that we are able to then live up to those challenges? So that's this is the first part of that conversation, and that process. And I am very, very thankful to each one of you for spending this much time with us on a for us it's a Saturday evening, it's a Saturday afternoon, and I'm really, really thankful on Dr. Sachin to say a few words of conclusion. Dr. Sachin.
Well, usually conclusion we talk about two things which come to an end, but this conversation I think has really only opened up new things for people to think about, and it's not really a closure at the moment. But the things that were discussed were mostly about the evolution, how design began, and how it evolves uh, into the story of design is still evolving and it's opening up. And if this is a new chapter, is it really a new chapter, or it's an extension of something that we have already been doing, uh, and is just adding more complexity to it? So looking at design from a single product to uh, with a function, which is something when things were really simple, product having function, and then product moving to experiences and systems. So is this so we could clearly see the evolution in thought in from moving from product, function to experience and system. So are we moving further into a next level of evolution, or it is simply a more complex form of experience and system design? So this is something that uh, there, it's still open for conversation. It's still unfolding. So that's how, this is a story which really does not have an end at the moment.
And I don't think that's a story that can ever end. And this is the story of design. It is the story of how human evolution happens. So I think, once again, I thank you all so very much for this, for your time, and we hope to be able to be in touch with you to sort of help us brainstorm, to put together. And I also, it's a dream for us at Sushant to create a program that's truly collaborative, where we can actually collaborate with people like you, and actually co-deliver the, programs like this in multiple locations. So even your students in Sweden, in Italy, in India, working together to actually solve complex challenges with all the philosophical background that we have. And that's really the dream for us at Sushant. We want to really try and push those boundaries as much as possible and see that we are able to come up with something very, very worthwhile for our students and to the society at large. So that's really our aim, and I hope we'll be able to we seek your help in taking this forward. So thank you once again. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Namaste, and have a good evening and a good weekend.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.